Caitlin Clark was out smiling, drink in her hand, laughing with teammates like everything was normal, and then just hours later, she's suddenly dealing with another injury, missing one of the biggest weekends of her career. And when you actually look at how fast that shift happened, it doesn't feel like a simple coincidence anymore. Insiders are alleging she was poisoned, her drink spiked. Now, what's making this situation feel even more uncomfortable is not just that she got hurt again, it's how that entire night played out, and one small moment people didn't think twice about at first, but now everybody is going back to watch it again and again, trying to understand if something about it was off. Because if you go back to that video, Caitlin looks relaxed, she's joking around, she's clearly in a good mood while talking about how she spent her day just watching golf and staying away from practice, and everything about her energy in that moment feels light, like someone who is recovering and just taking it easy.
Where's Coach at? Get on the line! Get out! Get out! All I did today, I watched golf. You had RC going crazy. I've been watching it. Y'all set it up. Say what's out to the streets, man. What's going on, man? Coach, set it up.
But then, right in the middle of that conversation, one of her teammates casually reaches over and takes the drink straight out of her hand, and at the time it looked like nothing serious, just a playful move between teammates who are comfortable around each other, so nobody questioned it. Now that same clip is being looked at very differently, and the reason is simple: that moment sits right before everything changes, because once that night is over, the next time we see Caitlin in a public setting, she's standing on Good Morning America, smiling again and saying she feels good. But the situation around her is already completely different, since she's no longer participating in the All-Star game, and she's out of the three-point contest, which is something she was expected to dominate. Now, this is where things stop feeling straightforward, since her words and her situation don't fully match. Because while she's saying she feels fine and trying to keep the energy positive, her body is clearly not in a place where she can compete, and that's what starts pushing people to look deeper into what's really going on. As everything starts connecting, this isn't just about one injury, since Caitlin's entire season has been filled with setbacks that keep stacking on top of each other, starting with a quad strain early on, followed by repeated groin issues that kept coming back, and even during recovery, she was dealing with an ankle problem, which eventually led to her season ending after only 13 games. When you look at that full picture, it becomes harder to brush it off as bad luck, especially when you combine it with what happens to her every time she steps onto the court. Think of it. Every game follows a similar pattern where Caitlin is not just being defended, she's being tested physically in a way that stands out, with constant contact, extra pressure, and moments that cross the line from competitive to personal. And what makes it stand out even more is how often those moments pass without any reaction from her own teammates. Instead of stepping in or setting boundaries, the response is silence. And over time, that silence starts to feel louder than anything else happening on the floor. Now take a step away from the WNBA for a second and look at how she's treated in a completely different environment. Because when Caitlin stepped onto the court in Puerto Rico with Team USA, the crowd didn't just react, they showed real excitement and support the moment she appeared. That energy carried into her performance as she took control of the game, creating plays, setting the tempo, and delivering a performance that earned her MVP honors at just 24 years old, showing exactly why she's seen as one of the most important players in the game right now.
You see here, standing in front of us, and the TISO MVP of the tournament is none other than Miss Caitlin Clark. It's undeniable the impact she's made on women's basketball, and here in Puerto Rico had quite the showing. Her debut with the senior team, the double-double with both points and assists. And in her senior debut, she wins the TISO MVP at the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifying tournament here in Puerto Rico.
What stands out in that moment is how different everything feels, since she's respected, supported, and able to play freely without the same level of physical targeting that defines her experience back in the league. That contrast is what starts raising bigger questions, because it shows that the environment around her changes how she's treated, which means the issue might not be her at all. Now, when you bring the focus back to the Indiana Fever, the situation becomes even more complicated, since they are sitting on a player who draws attention, fills arenas, and keeps the spotlight on the team regardless of the results on the court, and that kind of value shifts how decisions are made behind the scenes. When a player brings that level of attention, the urgency to fix deeper issues can quietly fade, since the business side continues to benefit no matter what happens in the standings, and that creates a situation where winning and protecting the player are no longer the only priorities. As all of this builds, that night from earlier starts to feel more important, since it sits right in the middle of everything, with Caitlyn looking completely fine in one moment and then suddenly being out again shortly after. And while there's no direct proof connecting anything from that night to what followed, the timing alone is enough to make people question if something about it deserves a closer look. At the same time, voices outside the league have started paying attention to how she's being treated, with LeBron James openly supporting her and pointing out how unusual the criticism and pressure around her has been, while also acknowledging the impact she's having on the growth of the game.
More people want to watch. More people want to tune in. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it f***ed up. Caitlin Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA. But for her individually, I don't think she should get involved on nothing that's being said. Just go.
And Mace also stepped in, making it clear that the way she's being treated doesn't sit right, and calling out the physical approach that some players seem to be taking against her.
So I agree with that, but I disagree with the way that they're treating Caitlyn. If somebody came in and they were adding more eyes and more marketing dollars, why would you try to make that person not a success? And that needs to stop. There's no place for hate in the WNBA.
What makes that even more noticeable is that these voices are coming from outside the league, while inside the league players continue to say there's no issue, with Angel Reese publicly stating that there's no hate between her and Caitlyn, even as the on-court interactions continue to tell a more complicated story.
Me and Caitlin Clark don't hate each other. Like, I want everybody to understand that it's just a super competitive game.
That gap between what's being said and what's being seen is where the tension really starts to build, since it leaves people trying to figure out which version reflects the truth, as everything connects, from the injuries to the physical play to the silence from teammates and the difference in how she's treated depending on where she plays. The situation stops feeling like a series of random events and starts to look like something that keeps repeating in a way that's hard to ignore. And when that pattern lines up with a moment like that night, where everything seemed normal right before another setback, it naturally leads people to wonder if they are looking at isolated moments or pieces of a bigger situation that hasn't fully come to the surface yet. So now the conversation isn't just about her missing games or dealing with injuries. It's about whether she's being put in a position where those outcomes keep happening, and whether the system around her is doing enough to protect someone who clearly carries so much of the league's attention. And when you look at how much she brings to the game, how much she's already achieved, and how differently she's treated depending on the environment, it leaves one question sitting there that no one seems ready to answer directly. Was that night simply a break from the pressure, or was it the point where everything quietly shifted in a direction nobody expected?